Bible on it, feel free to pull it up. I'll have it up on the screen. We're going to read it through once together, and then we're going to kind of go back over it with the system that we've been going through for doubt, right? First, considering what's the source of the doubt, what's the consequences of either following through on that doubt or not following through, and then what's the actual truth at play. So this is what Mark chapter 9, verses 14 to 29 says. When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, talking about Jesus here, were greatly amazed, and they ran up to him, and they greeted him. And they asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, this is Jesus here, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." So, right, there's a situation going on. This guy has this son who has this issue with an evil spirit. From what we know, this has sort of been a lifelong issue, like we're going to see. And he gets brought to Jesus, and Jesus is frustrated. Jesus is like, how come people still don't believe? How long do I have to put up with this? Jesus is sort of in a weird spot here where everyone has this place of doubt, and Jesus, I think, like rightfully so, like if you read through the book of Mark up to this point, people just keep doubting Jesus. And so Jesus is like, why does everyone just keep doubting what I can do? So they bring the boy to Jesus, and when the spirit saw him, right, spirit sees Jesus, immediately it convulsed the boy. He fell on the ground, and he rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it's often cast him into fire and into water to destroy him." So this is a really serious situation. This is a horrible, horrible demon that this kid is dealing with. This is a kid that's probably younger than you guys, which is just horrible to think about. But then the dad says, "But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And notice sort of how he phrases it, right? He doesn't say, "I know you can do this, help us." He's saying, if you can do something, I'm not 100% sure, but if you can do anything, please help us, have compassion on us. And then Jesus says, if you can, come on, man, I can do this, right? If you can, all things are possible for one who believes. And immediately the father of the child cried out and said, and this is really important here for just the whole theme of this story, "I believe, help my unbelief." I believe, help my unbelief. So this guy is at this weird place of I do believe that you can do this, but I don't fully believe it. Help me get to that point. Help me get over this doubt that I have. And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him, never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse. And most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand, lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered his house, the disciples asked him privately, "Why couldn't we cast it out?" Right? The disciples have been going about sort of doing ministry. If you were at church on Sunday, I talked a little bit about how Jesus sends the disciples out, right? Jesus kind of trusts the disciples now to go out and do ministry. And the disciples are confused. They're like, why didn't the demon come out? We've done this stuff before. Why didn't it happen? And he said to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in the context of faith and doubt. So, the first thing that we've been, sort of looking at when doubt creeps into our minds, when we start to experience doubt, is we have to consider where that doubt's coming from, right? Is the doubt coming from an outside source, right? When we read things online, we've been talking about how, sort of this fake news thing that's going on, this fake news epidemic is introducing doubt into people's minds, right? Masks don't really work, and maybe, this person is actually this, and the government does this, and it's sort of introducing doubt into people's minds. But what if the source is us? What if we are the source? Has anyone ever seen a dog look in a mirror at themselves? It's the funniest thing in the whole world, because they literally cannot comprehend that is them. It's so funny to me. Sometimes we just hold up my wife's family's dog in front of the mirror just to see what it does, and it can't comprehend that is it. But we're sort of in a similar situation when we start to doubt ourselves. We don't know who we are, and what do we do when the doubt's not coming from an outside source? We're not necessarily even doubting God, although that might be a part of it, but we're mostly just doubting ourselves, right? Doubt comes from within. Well, look at what this text says here, right? Let's go to just the highlighted portion. If you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us. So this guy has, sort of this doubt, right? This disbelief within himself that Jesus can do this. And I think part of that is obviously like doubting Jesus, but I think this is also just a doubt that this man is carrying within himself. Like he can't get himself to the point of being totally convinced. And what does Jesus say, right? If you can, what are you talking about? Like, if I can do this? Of course I can. All things are possible for one who believes. And this guy says sort of a famous quote, right? I believe, help my unbelief. So what do we do when we are at that point? And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the Christian life is like that. It's like, I believe in Jesus, I believe in God, but I still have trouble believing. Like, how do I do this? What's the solution here? And I think the solution is being honest with yourself. Being honest with yourself, being honest with Jesus, being honest with others. I love what this guy does here. Like, this guy goes to Jesus and is just straight up honest with him, and he says, I believe, but you need to help me. Like, I don't fully believe. And I think sometimes, I don't know if you guys, a lot of you I know are raised in Christian homes, you're raised in the church, and there's sort of this understanding that like, hey, you have to believe in Jesus. Absolutely, we should believe in Jesus. But if you don't like 100% fully believe all the time, then you are weak, right? Your faith is weak, and you're a bad Christian for not, like, how could you not fully believe? And we have so many things about, trying to convince people to believe. And what happens when there's tension, right? What happens when we say, I am having a hard time with this? Like, I'm having a hard time and I'm doubting and I don't know if I fully believe. What does the guy do? He's just honest. Like, he's honest with Jesus, he's honest with himself, and there's a bunch of other people there, right? It says that he cries this out. I believe, help my unbelief. He's not just honest with himself and with Jesus, but he's honest with everybody that's there as well. And so we have to be honest with ourselves. This was a test that they used to do in the 60s and 70s about people going into peer pressure, conforming. Everyone look at line A here for a second, okay? Look at line A. Which line is the same length as line A? Anyone? Who? What was it? Anyone willing to say? What is it? B. Yeah, it's B. It's not a hard question. It's a really easy question. But they used to do these studies where they would take one person and then they would take like 5 or 6 other people, they'd put them in a room, and the one person had no idea what was going on, but the other 5 did. And they would start by going one by one with all the people that knew, and they'd say, okay, what line is the same? And they'd be like, oh, D, D, D. And then the person that had no idea, when it came to their turn, they're like, it's D, right? Like, it has to be D. It's obviously not D, like it's B. But 9 times out of 10, everyone just goes along with what everyone else does, right? Because you don't want to look stupid, you don't want to seem like you're wrong, even though the right answer is clearly B. And sometimes it can feel like that when it comes to, talking about belief, talking about doubt in Christian communities, right? I don't want to look stupid, I don't want to look like my faith is weak, I don't want to look wrong, and so I don't want to, say that I'm having an issue with this. But what I think the story shows us is like, that's okay. It's okay to be honest with Jesus. It is way better to be honest than to not be. So what are the consequences? Like, what are the consequences of actually just being honest with Jesus, being honest with ourselves, being honest with others? What does that look like? How does Jesus respond to doubt? How does Jesus respond to that honesty? Well, look at what he does, right? Jesus sees the crowd and he rebukes the unclean spirit, right? He goes ahead and he heals this kid, even though this guy says to him, I'm not fully there, right? Help my unbelief. Jesus does not say to this guy, you know what? You're not fully there yet. I'm not going to help you. Like, I only help the people who believe 100%, right? I only help those people. But Jesus doesn't do that here, right? Jesus heals this guy's son. But we've seen in the past, right? I talked about this at church on Sunday, there are parts of the Bible, right? We see it in Mark chapter 6, where that's not the case. Like, people don't believe in Jesus. This happened in his hometown of Nazareth. And what does Jesus say? It says that he could do no mighty work there, except he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. Like, Jesus goes to his hometown, people don't believe in him, and he is awestruck. He's like, how could these people not believe in me? So what is the difference between the people in Nazareth, Jesus' hometown, and this guy? Like, both of them are not fully at a point of belief. Why does Jesus not help the people in his hometown, and why does he help this guy? What's the difference? I think it's honesty. I think it's the guy saying, I need help. Like, I'm not there. The people in Jesus' hometown, the people in Nazareth, we assume that they didn't believe who Jesus was, and they never came to Jesus and said, we need your help, right? It was, we don't believe you, and we don't want to believe you, and you don't have anything to offer us anyway. I think the difference with this guy, even though he didn't believe, is at least he's at a point where he can go, please help me. Like, I might not fully believe, but I need your help. So we have to be at a point of humility, right? We need to ask Jesus for help. This is not like a rant on, don't go on social media or any of that kind of stuff. I'm on social media all the time. My screen time for Instagram makes me really sad sometimes at the end of the day. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm on Instagram too much. But what I will say is, I think that you guys, and most of the world now, is living in this period in time where all that we see is just like good stuff, right? We just see like the highlights of how everyone's doing. Everyone's posting like they're at the beach, they're on vacation, they're doing really well, and that can just lead to this total feeling of like, I'm not good enough, right? I'm not worthy. I am not even close to where I want to be when I compare myself to these people. But that's not an honest look at our lives, right? So, whether it's on social media, whether it's at school, whether it's with your parents, I don't care if you guys are on social media, that's fine. But what I do care about is, are we honest with ourselves? Like, are we honest enough to say, I'm not doing well, or I need help? It's so easy for us to try and just present the perfect picture of who we are, right? This is me, and this is my brand, and I got everything going for me, right? Everything is perfect. And what does honesty lead to? It leads to healing, right? This guy's son gets healed because he's honest enough with Jesus to say, I need your help. Please help me. And that's the consequence of honesty. And the last thing before we go into our small groups, consider the truth, right? We have to consider the truth of the message. And this is where we have this, I want to talk a little bit about this interesting verse about prayer. The disciples can't cast this demon out of this kid, and they're going, Jesus, why can't we do this? Like, usually we have no problem. And Jesus says, this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer. And I think what Jesus is trying to say here is, you might have thought that you were, hot stuff, you could go and cast demons out without any issue. The reason you couldn't do this one is because you did not take the time to pray. You did not take the time to rely on me, to trust in me, to ask me for help. And that's what prayer is, right? Prayer is essentially going to God and saying, I can't do it myself. I need help. I'm not perfect. I'm not all there. And I think that's what the disciples were missing here. They probably went into the situation and said, we've done this 100 times. We can cast this demon out, no problem. And they never considered for a second, should we pray to God for this? And Jesus is saying, you can't do everything. You have to rely on me. You need my help, right? Great Beatles song. We need help. Everyone needs help. Are the Beatles at all popular still? Do people now still kind of listen to the Beatles? I feel like everyone at some point in their life, I was like 15 or 16 when I discovered the Beatles for the first time, which is late. That's a late discovery of the Beatles. But I remember thinking like, this is the best band that's ever existed. I love the Beatles, and I still love the Beatles. Anyone like the Beatles? Any Beatles fans? Okay, Katrina? Well, you're from England, so that's like us liking hockey. Like, I think you have to like the Beatles. Anyone else like the Beatles?
Aren't the Beatles American?
What?
John! No donut for John. Absolutely not, John. Absolutely not.
Wait, what?
No, the Beatles are not American.
Why don't they have English accents?
This is my exact point, everyone. Sometimes we think we know everything. We have to ask for help. We have to ask people to help us out. They are not Americans. They just don't sing it. They sometimes sing the British accent.
What?
We need help. They're not American. We'll do a music lesson in our small group. It's okay. So when I'm closing here, what I want to say to you guys is just be honest. Like, be honest with yourselves, be honest with Jesus. The point of Jesus is that we have someone to ask for help, like someone who can look into our lives, we can bring our doubts to him, and we don't have to be afraid that he's going to turn us away. He is going to turn away if we don't come to him for help, right? He's not going to force us to ask, but if we come to him for help, he is going to be there for us. He's going to reach down into the depths